I think one of our biggest challenges is lack of supply. So we don't have a lot of available land. We don't have a lot of available space for new things to come in. And so we use the tagline carefully curated. And that's kind of how we feel about, trying to pick the right mix of businesses and they support both our community, but also nearby. So it is definitely a challenge to keep the small town feel when the land prices are what they are these days. And so it makes it really hard for small, unique businesses to come in and get started. So keeping that kind of downtown charm feel going, it's getting harder by the day with the prices of things. So that's a challenge for us as well. My name is Julie Davis. We have a fantastic discussion lined up for you today, and we're going to talk all about the growth from New Braunfels, Texas to Buda, Texas. This corridor has been really just remarkable in economic growth. And we have two very special guests with us today. We have Jeff Jewell with New Braunfels and Jennifer Storm with Buda Economic Development. So maybe I can turn it over to both of you and tell me a little bit about your background and what you do in those roles.
Sure. Well, good morning. Thanks for having me, Julie. My name is Jeff Jewell. I'm the Director of Economic and Community Development for the city of New Braunfels. Been in that particular role for about 5 years. Prior to that, I worked in housing and community development consulting with a nationwide nonprofit and went around the country doing economic and housing developments for different client communities. And then before that, I actually worked in economic development in a different role in the city manager's office for the city. I've been in New Braunfels now for about 12 years in various economic development roles and in economic and community development in Central Texas and the Hill Country for about almost 20 now.
Well, welcome, Jeff. And Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jennifer Storm, CEO of Buda Economic Development Corporation. I started my career in government and community relations and kind of moved into association management. I have been in this role for a little over 2 years in Buda. I previously served almost 4 years as the chair of the Buda EDC. So it's been really exciting times to make the change. I've been in Buda almost 12 years.
That's great. Welcome, Jennifer. Thanks. Thank you so much. So really, I wanted to talk first about some of the challenges that smaller towns face in economic development. And then we'll get into the trends and then some of the opportunities. So first of all, what are the unique hurdles that you've encountered over the last year or two when attracting new business, especially compared to larger cities that are nearby, like San Antonio and Austin? So have you, Jeff, had any challenges per se?
Well, being in New Braunfels and the corridor in general, I think we're somewhat subject to the economic winds of, in New Braunfels, we're a little closer to San Antonio. We're a little more linked economically to San Antonio, but we're also subject to what's happening in Austin too. So we ebb and flow with what those two major metropolitan areas are doing. We obviously get a lot of, I guess, indirect benefits from San Antonio's growth, but also a lot of spillover from industry as well. Our economy is roughly aligned with San Antonio's in terms of industry makeup. But in terms of challenges, we've been under enormous growth pressure really for almost 15 years now. In 2010, we had close to 58,000 people, and right now we're at about 114,000. So we've basically doubled in the last 15 years. I think the challenge is really to try to keep some level of authenticity. People choose to live first now, I think, and then look for jobs and careers in either that community or surrounding areas. So I think in New Braunfels, it's been challenging to try to remain true to what New Braunfels has historically been, which is, a community founded by immigrants in the mid-19th century that had a strong industrial manufacturing base growing up, but also over the last 50, 60 years became known as a place where people could come and have fun and celebrations and where people vacationed. And so trying to maintain that character that where New Braunfels kind of stays fun and unique and a great place to visit, and that has benefits for its visitors and its residents alike. So I think trying to be true to its authenticity has been a challenge.
Definitely a challenge. And Jennifer, I know that you've had some challenges and opportunities, but what about the challenges?
Similar type challenges. Of course, we're a lot smaller than New Braunfels. So we have 18,000 residents in the city limits and about 30 in the ETJ. But we are the first community just south of Austin. So for sure, there's a lot of opportunities. I think one of our biggest challenges is lack of supply. So we don't have a lot of available land. We don't have a lot of available space for new things to come in. And so we use the tagline carefully curated. And that's kind of how we feel about, trying to pick the right mix of businesses and they support both our community, but also nearby. So it is definitely a challenge to keep the small town feel when the land prices are what they are these days. And so it makes it really hard for small, unique businesses to come in and get started. So keeping that kind of downtown charm feel going, it's getting harder by the day with the prices of things. So that's a challenge for us as well.
Carefully curated. I love that. Yeah, that is a great tagline that definitely reflects the culture there, for sure. For sure. So let's talk about 2025 and looking forward. It's so many great opportunities ahead of us, and it probably is a little challenging to prioritize some of those great opportunities. But from your perspective, Jeff, what would you view some of those your best opportunities? What do they look like for 2025 and beyond?
Well, we're guided by what we call Confluence, which is our economic development strategic plan that the Greater New Braunfels Chamber of Commerce led and involved a lot of stakeholders from different businesses and obviously the city and the chamber. We all kind of mapped a vision forward, and it's really recognizing that just like most economic development organizations are really focused on expanding the quality job base that's in your local community and trying to capture people that are currently maybe commuting out of the New Braunfels area for work. So that involves, focusing on professional business services, trying to identify where the gaps are in terms of the jobs that are in New Braunfels relative to what our residents actually do. So trying to match up those skills and those job placements in the community as a whole. So from a typical economic development perspective, I think we're not much different. I think New Braunfels is in a little bit of a unique spot now because we're basically built out, and this is something that we've been examining now for at least 5 years. In the city of New Braunfels, the way that annexation laws have changed in Texas is that most city limits, corporate limits, the official boundaries of the city, if you will, are pretty much fixed now. And non-voluntary annexation is not an option that cities have to grow anymore. And so New Braunfels, we're about 29 square miles or so. We have about 25,000 acres, if you will. So we think about how to grow in terms of in kind of a spatial orientation and a spatial sense. And a lot of our land is built out and developed. So we're thinking about how are we going to continue to remain economically viable through redevelopment and infill, as opposed to kind of greenfield development, which is not really an option for the city anymore. So that poses a different set of challenges versus a community that does have a lot of land and can put up new buildings everywhere relatively easy. So that identifying and strategizing about how to be strategic with our land is something that I think we're really, really focused on in 2025.
And Jennifer, what about you? What do you see for 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, we all sound very similar. So we have a strategic plan that we work from also. A big opportunity for us is that we have nearly 3 million square feet of industrial spec space, and that is going to keep us really busy. So we've already started kind of working with tenants and helping land some of those. To Jeff's point about the jobs that match the residents, I felt that way about workforce development for a while. Instead of bringing in jobs to import workforce, how about we bring in, jobs to use the workforce that we have? And so trying to leverage the highly skilled and highly educated workforce that we have in Buda for job opportunities, I think is top of the pile. We have some big bets, some kind of big crazy ideas that we're working on that is going to take 25, a lot of our time at 25, but will be more localized development, big things in our downtown area that I think will make long-term impacts. But recruitment is always, top of the list for economic developers. We pride ourselves on spending equal amounts of time on business retention and expansion. So trying to work with the existing businesses and help them grow right where they are. And so that's a big part of our mission as well.
So I'll ask each of you, what are your targeted industries? So Jennifer?
Sure. So similar to, I think Jeff already mentioned, the knowledge intensive business services. KIBS is the acronym that is, I never am going to get that right. Advanced manufacturing, of course. We have lots of food related industries. So U.S. Foods, Nighthawk Frozen Foods, Deep Eddy Vodka, things like that are already made in Buda. And so we're leveraging those connections to expand the food and beverage market. Okay, KIBS. Knowledge intensive businesses, advanced manufacturing, arts and entertainment, primarily around destination retail and restaurant. So that's something we're focused on that leans kind of towards that keeping Buda Buda. What are those unique businesses that people want to come here for? And then last, we kind of consider an umbrella to all of that, which is entrepreneurship. So in our strategic plan, the data revealed that we have lots of entrepreneurs in Buda. And so figuring out how to help them grow and start right there, which is why we are launching an incubator in 25.
That's very
exciting. One of our big bets for 25 is incubator, accelerator, and co-working space.
And Jeff, what about your targeted industries for New Braunfels?
Yeah, I mean, just like Jennifer said, professional business services. We think that New Braunfels is in a unique spot. We also have some really kind of what we term catalytic redevelopment opportunities that we think would serve as a great opportunity for kind of regional headquarters for a lot of different companies that may be looking to get out of the Austin market, for example. The commercial real estate up there, that a little tenuous in the last couple of years. We have had looks from companies that are looking to kind of maybe centralize some facilities and leave the Austin market and still have a presence in this region. So we think we've got a couple good spots here, and that's also what we're focused on when we talk about in terms of redevelopment, is taking assets that are currently underutilized or land or abandoned sites, basically at this point, that present a real opportunity to create a unique place for companies to relocate. When we talk about being authentic, taking a look at the assets that we do have and how do we, to borrow the term of curate, but how do we kind of curate the experience in New Braunfels as well and present a unique value proposition of companies that would be looking to locate regional headquarters in their community, because folks want to be in places where we're kind of mixed use developments now. I think gone are the days of office parks with a sea of parking around it. Everybody kind of wants to be integrated with a variety of options: retail, food and bev, housing, et cetera. And so we have a couple of unique places that we're working on actively to try to get those off the ground and running.
So Jennifer, maybe you can talk a little bit about what economic incentives you have and any examples of any workforce development opportunities that you've worked on or that you may be working on.
Sure. I think we all have kind of the same economic development incentives really across the board in terms of sales tax rebates or property tax rebates. We have recently done a deal with a electric vehicle manufacturer called Foodtronic that we supported jobs. So it was a jobs-based incentive, sort of leaning into your workforce question, trying to support jobs for the area and high-paying jobs. And so that's part of our incentive. But most of what we do is 380 type agreements, sales tax and property tax rebates. That's kind of our preference. We have looked into loan type programs. We get a lot of requests for that, especially from the smaller businesses. And so it's sort of this dichotomy of what the big businesses need versus what the small businesses need. It's really completely different. The larger businesses can wait 20 and 30 years to get their sales tax rebate over time, and the small businesses just can't. They just can't do it. So trying to figure out how to have a product that is safe and reliable for local businesses, but also the right thing for our organization is something that we're continuing to work toward. In terms of workforce, we have a really great career tech education program at Hayes Consolidated School District. So we work with them often. I think we're both blessed by the sort of global market between Austin and San Antonio that workforce development we don't have to solely shoulder that in Buda or in New Braunfels. I would say that, this area is rather mobile. So somebody driving in from San Marcos or driving down from South Austin is pretty normal for us. So it amplifies our 18,000 citizens, our 30,000, ETJ citizens to a good number of available workforce folks in the region.
Absolutely. And Jeff, what about you?
Yeah, I think, well, we have a Type B Economic Development Corporation, like a lot of Texas communities have. We've been, I think, pretty creative with how to deploy those funds. Our Economic Development Corporation really does, I think, kind of do the traditional stuff that EDCs do. They'll do infrastructure development. They'll do jobs grants, if you will. So the company performs and then it's kind of a perform then pay kind of arrangement. But we also have tax increment financing. We have actually 3 tax increment zones in different parts of the community. 2 of them are really focused on redevelopment opportunities. So that does provide some grants for businesses that are existing to do infrastructure improvements, facade redevelopment, code upgrades to their buildings, et cetera. We have property tax abatements. We really do kind of run the gamut on what is available in New Braunfels, because you've really got to be very, very customized in what a business needs. Every business has different needs. They have different, they run kind of a different calculus about what will make their project work. So sometimes it may be a land purchase. It could be infrastructure upgrades to the wastewater line, for example, or it could be just, a property tax abatement that's lowering their operating expenses. One of the newest areas that we've really focused in on, and when we talk about 2025, we have been very, very much focused on workforce development. Recently had a partnership with Texas State Technical College, which operates out of a building out at the New Braunfels National Airport, to do workforce development training. And so we, the EDC, purchased in partnership with the Seguin EDC, purchased a large amount of equipment there for their advanced manufacturing training program. And so that was an incentive to a higher ed institution so that they could get going and up and started and start off making these offerings to our regional workforce. And not to our surprise, they're already out of room and the program's fully committed, and now they're looking to expand. So
That's great.
That was an important incentive to get them into the door and have them up and running, because we are training the workforce not only for New Braunfels and Seguin, but really for our region as well.
Absolutely. So I wanted to shift really to the last 2 items. And the last 2 items is, what do you really see as the national trends in economic development nationwide? And what advice would you give to people that are listening to the podcast that may have a small town that they have not yet contemplated, or they're just developing an economic development group? What advice would you give them?
Well, I hate to say this, but I don't really follow national trends in a way that I probably should. We are so underwater with so many things happening all the time that I feel like I'm barely on local trends. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to do a great job answering that question, but I definitely think in general, nationally, we were all waiting for the election to be behind us. People were waiting to make decisions around the election. And so things have kind of broke loose since that time. Um, I I'm a big fan of partnerships, so I think the EDC has been an asset to Buda. I think if a small town is considering doing it, I think it's really important to have positive relationships with your city council, with the chamber, with the school district, and beyond. For us, we're a part of Opportunity Austin and what is now called Hayes Caldwell Economic Development Partnership, formerly GSMP, which is real hard to reprogram yourself to say HCEDP after you've said GSMP for a lot of years. But they're a great partner for us, and we do a lot of regional work. So um, I I would say do it. It's a great opportunity to reinvest in your community and to focus on things that bring wealth to your community, that bring job opportunities, sales tax, and property tax generation. While the city does that as well, the EDC gets to eat, sleep, dream about this every single day. While sometimes the city has, bigger issues that they have to deal with, water and roads and things like that. So I think it's a great partnership to have, and it's been a good one for us.
Absolutely. And what about you, Jeff?
Well, I struggle a lot with the reality of remote work and how for so long people needed to be fixed in a particular area. And I think that though lots of businesses are pulling people back into the office, I think the reality of remote work is here on a permanent basis. And I think that means pretty significant things for economic developers because, it's a lot of times it's about getting the capital investment, or that's what you can legally kind of incentivize, if you will. The incentives are driven towards having more capital investment, and a focused base of employment. But the reality is now that I don't I look at having, for example, a patent or an intellectual property attorney that goes into Austin um, 2 or 3 days a week for their job to their firm. I would like to have that person live in New Braunfels and spend their disposable income in New Braunfels and provide the professional talents in the community of New Braunfels. So I think the future of economic development is a lot about place, and how do you make your place, your community, somewhere where people want to be. And that goes beyond traditional economic development that we've been taught in the last 20 years coming up here, but it becomes much more broad. It becomes about community building. It becomes about housing. Housing is a big area that economic developers have begun to move in. 15 years ago when we were having this discussion, we were told that economic developers don't do housing. Now, seems like there's a lot of panels and conversations about, hey, how do we do more housing? Child care is going to continue to be a huge issue in Texas, probably nationally as well. And we know that the child care issue is keeping people out of the workforce, or it's having people underemployed. And so as economic developers in New Braunfels, we're looking about how can we support and help correct the market for the child care and early childhood education, which is really, really important for not only for working parents today, but also for the future of the workforce, because this is who the workforce is going to be in 20 years. So we're going to move into more non-traditional areas, I think, in economic development that's really focused on community building and people, and giving people the the skills and the tools that they need to really have the best or the greatest amount of economic mobility that they can have.
And so what advice would you give other communities that are just starting economic development group? And what advice would you give them?
I would say kind of what I opened up with, be authentic to your place. Don't try to replicate what I call the off-ramp economy. Be true to the businesses that are there already and figure out ways to help existing businesses grow, but also to give people that are there in your community kind of the tools that they need to climb that ladder and figure out what that may be. And, it's going to be, I think it's going to be housing, it's going to be education, it's going to be early childhood education, those subject areas, the kind of the I guess the softer areas that economic developers have not traditionally been involved in. But I broaden what economic development means, because ultimately it's about people, and that's why we're doing this, is to give people and give them the tools that they can do to have the best and most attainable, I guess,
Absolutely.
life that they can have.
Absolutely. And Jennifer really summed it up by mentioning partnership was like a key piece of all that. Whether you're venturing into new waters or continuing on with the same. So this conversation has been so insightful. I thank you so much. And again, we've got Jeff Jewell with the new Braunfels Economic Development and Jennifer Storm with Buda Economic Development. So thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having us.